JJ asked me if I was going to tell a story today, and I told her that I never loved anyone or lost anything, which was a lie. She told me that I was lucky, but I disagree. There was a book that I read many years ago that used the analogy that when we lose something and we're racked with that grief and the tears are coming out, that was just a well that was dug deeply with love. That well was dug so deep with love, that's why you have so much grief coming out. A couple of years ago, I had to say goodbye to what had been my vacation. Growing up, all of my life, we'd gone to our beach house. I didn't know that having a beach house was a big deal. I just kind of grew up with it. And it was on a lake in Michigan. It wasn't at the ocean. It had belonged to my parents. Before that, to my grandparents. My grandfather and my father had dug the foundation for it with a shovel. Eventually, they upgraded and got a small tractor to be able to work the land. But it had all been built by hand by my father and my grandfather. And that was every single year, twice a year we went there. We went there in the spring and we went there in the fall. So there was a plethora of memories and stories that could be told on other days of the time that my brothers and I were trying to help my father get the fish in the boat and we tipped the boat over, losing all of the tackle and the fishing rods, and my father got us back in the boat and then walked the boat back to the house. Or the time that my grandfather swam across the lake, or the time that my mom got run over by a lawnmower. There's a ton of stories there, and so many fond memories. But I had to say goodbye. And when it came time to say goodbye to the house, the part that was the hardest was saying goodbye to the well. Because one of the very first things that they'd done on the property is they dug a well. And there was a hand pump, an antique hand pump. And I'm told at one point in time it was fire engine red, and now it was just rust colored. But that was the first thing that we did every time that we got there, is we went out and we got water that we'd stored from the last time we were there in gallon jugs, and we primed the well and we'd get it going. And to this day, no water has ever tasted better than the water from that well. So when it was time to say goodbye, my parents had sold the house because they knew that they couldn't live there anymore. It was on the side of a huge hill, and they'd just gotten too old to really keep up with living on the side of that hill and everything that that entailed. I went out to that well and I looked at it, and I went and I talked to my mom and I said, I'm taking the pump. She said, well, I don't know if I said, no, I'm taking the pump. When it comes to the closing of the real estate, if they have an issue, I will pay the extra money. I'm taking the pump with me because it was such a fond part of that memory, and I wanted something I could take home that I could put out in the yard that would remind me of all those good stories. What made this whole transition so incredibly hard was that my vacation to say goodbye to this house happened about a month earlier than we planned. My father had been cleaning out the basement and had slipped and fallen. And at his advanced age, he'd broken a vertebra. And we thought he was going to recover, and he did not. So, about 4 days before I took the well off of that pipe, we had to give the order to unplug my father. And that well was dug deep. And the water poured. And it almost destroyed me. But my children kept me grounded enough to come back and get back to work and keep moving. And I couldn't keep my father around forever. None of us can. But we can hold on to those memories, and we can hold on to those stories. And maybe put something in the garden to remind us, to tell those stories to other people, to share that love again.